Everyone knows the story of the Titanic. The largest ship ever fashioned by man hit an iceberg on its main voyage in the middle of the North Atlantic. 1,500 lives were lost. The tragedy has been well documented in books and on film. No matter how often the story is told, it never fails to capture our imagination. Yet, it is a story that has left many questions unanswered. There are 2 books on the subject as to where I got my information from. You should read these books because they explain a lot more than that I can go through. This is the reason why I think 2 miles under the ocean doesn't lie the Titanic, but the sister ship, the Olympic. So we'll start with White Star Line that built 3 ships, the Olympic and the Titanic, which were to be identical, and then the Britannic, all funded by Mr. J.P. Morgan. The Olympic was the first ship done. Titanic was not too far along, but Olympic set out to sail where it had some minor accidents, we shall say. On June 14th, 1911, the Olympic, with the captain, Edward Smith, the Commodore of the White Star Line, was involved with a collision with a tugboat in New York. This accident was minor, but it caused the tugboat to sink. And just a reminder, Edward Smith was the captain of the Olympic and the Titanic when it sank. September 20th, 1911, the Olympic, still under the command of Captain Smith, was involved in another collision, this time with a British warship, the Warhawk. This is the main collision that sealed the fate of the Olympic. It's not really sure how this accident took place, but nevertheless, the British warship, the Warhawk, collided with the rear side of the Olympic, damaging underneath the waterline and also above the waterline. Look at the size of this hole, and that's just above the waterline right there. The structural damage that was done here, it wasn't known yet, but will be unrepairable. The accident was investigated by the Royal Naval Team, which found the Olympic at fault, so the White Star Line insurers would not pay for the damage. When they got the ship back to dry dock, they found that the keel of the ship was bent and cannot be repaired. The keel is basically the backbone of the ship, which left the ship with a lean to the left. That's an important part to remember.
The starboard propeller is going to have to be replaced, and the crankshaft is damaged. There's a crack between the arm and the shaft. But worse, the keel is bent. That's going to give her a permanent list to port, and there's no way we can correct that. We're going to have to cut the ship in half, insert a new frame, and then put it all back together again. The job is going to take months, and frankly, for what it's going to cost, I think it's simply a waste of time.
Can you not just patch her up until Titanic is ready?
Well, we could put in a bulkhead to strengthen her. But to be honest, sir, she will never pass another Board of Trade inspection.
So the Olympic was so badly damaged it would never pass the sea inspection the following year. Here is the Olympic pulling out. After the patch job, you could see the new panels, the newer black paint. So you could see how big the area was, and that's just above the waterline. 1 week later, after the patch job, the Olympic is involved in another accident. It runs over a sunken ship, losing a capella and jolting the engine as to where now there are metal shavings in the oil and compression is lost from the jolt. So she limps back to the Thompson dry dock and they start making repairs, and that's where Titanic also was, at the Thompson dry dock, and they frequently move both ships in and out at this time. So both ships were almost identical. This is where we have to tell them apart. The Olympic had 16 portholes in the front, and the Titanic only had 14 portholes at the front. They're just a few little differences, so we got to pay attention to that. And somehow, mysteriously, the Titanic, on the day of her launch, now has 2 more extra portholes forward. So this tells you that there's a possibility that they did switch the ships. So now on March 12th, 1912 was the last time the Olympic and the Titanic were together at the Belfast shipyard. This is where they could have switched the ships.
You can't be serious.
Olympic and Titanic are exactly the same. No one will know we've switched them when they get back to work on Monday morning. We'll just swap the names. Everything else is standard White Star issue. I have some boys at the yard who'll do the job for a couple of £100 each. And say nothing.
We'll never get away with it. If word of this gets out...
It's either that, Ismay, or we both go down. White Star Line and this yard.
There's got to be another way.
There isn't. We have no choice.
Right. That's it then.
Switching the ships at this time really would not have been that hard. There was no media poking around. Photography was just at its beginning. Many people were running around with cameras. The cookery, the pots, the pan were all standard White Star Line. They didn't say Titanic on them or Olympic. The only thing that would have to be switched out were the menus, and I believe the life vests too. So the other things that would have to be changed were the nameplates. The front and the back of the boat that said Titanic and Olympic switched. Another interesting part of the puzzle is that Ismay, chairman of White Star Line, had Titanic before her main voyage recarpeted. Was that to cover up Olympic's worn linoleum? Why would he just decide to put carpet on a brand new ship? The Harleton shipyard was working on all different types of ships there, not just Titanic, Olympic, all different stages of being completed. Nobody would have ever noticed or even questioned a switch at that time. And people back then stayed quiet. They would have never questioned their bosses. This was a time when there was no unemployment. People were very lucky to have a job. They were not going to question bosses on anything. And if you had a few loose lips, they were very easily bullied.
There's a wee scam going on here, and the bosses are in on it. They switched those ships 2 weeks ago, and I know it.
Listen to me, Paddy. Any more talk from you about 2 ships being swapped over, and you'll end up at the bottom of the River Lagan. So remember that when you get back to your wife and your 17 kids, you Irish scum.
Now we have to look at Captain Smith, who must have been in a funny situation with his employers, since all 3 accidents with the Olympic were caused by him. So he had to just do what he had to do, I guess.
Come now, EJ. We've always been good to you. Kept you in brandy and cigars. Besides, it's not going to be that difficult. You've broken a few of our ships, EJ. The Republic, the Germanic, the Coptic. And when that fire broke out on the Majestic and those crewmen were killed... Yes, I know you denied it had ever happened, but we did know. We gave you command of the Olympic, and look what a disaster that's turned out to be. And we always paid you well, EJ. Look, it's not for me. It's for the company. We are in a desperate situation financially, especially after what happened to the Olympic. So, I'm sorry to have to put it to you like this, but you do owe us. We've arranged for a small steamer from the Leyland line to be in a position to take the passengers off. I have a good man lined up for the job. Lord. Captain Stanley Lord. Ever come across him? Well, he's done this sort of thing before. Well, he did the job so well, he received a commendation for it. So, there it is. He'll be there to lend a hand. And I'll be there, of course. Along for the ride.
All right, then I want to choose my own officers.
Yes. Of course, E.J. Men you can trust, eh?
At the time of Titanic's main voyage, Britain was in a coal strike. Men were laid up without work, but yet White Star Line had difficulty finding workers below decks for the Titanic. Greasers, firemen. All these men without work refused to take a job on the Titanic. What did they really know? Shortly before Titanic sailed, Chief Officer Wilde, who loses his life 3 nights later, wrote a letter to his sister, which he said, "I still don't like this ship." It's a strange thing for him to write to his sister, or maybe he knew that he was really on the Olympic. Another interesting thing is J.P. Morgan had the best cabin on the Titanic, but on the 11th hour he canceled, said he was ill. A few of his closest buddies also canceled on the 11th hour due to illness. JP was shipping some statues back to New York, and he had those offloaded last minute. Here's another interesting fact, the fire. Did you know that Titanic had an uncontrolled fire in one of the coal chambers? A lot of people did not know that. I believe that was their secondary. If they couldn't sink it with the iceberg, they would smoke everybody out, get them off to safety, and once everybody was gone, they would find a way to sink it then.
New evidence suggests it was not just an iceberg that doomed the Titanic. More than 1,500 people died when the ship, considered unsinkable, plunged into the Atlantic Ocean more than 100 years ago. The Titanic was headed from England to New York. A new documentary says a large coal fire in the ship's hull may have played a role in the disaster. Mark Phillips is in London.
So long story short on this, I could keep going on and on forever. There are so many facts. I listed the 2 books that you can read, that there is just so much more evidence than I could even tell you. So this was just basically an insurance fraud. They didn't really plan on anybody to die. They had another ship out there waiting called the California. The captain of that was Stanley Lord, who was supposed to show up and rescue all the passengers and crew. But they had a miscommunication between where they were as to why he didn't get there in time. And might I add, the California, now keep in mind this is during a coal shortage. The California was only out to sea with sweaters and blankets. That was it. As for Captain Smith, he isn't really a hero. When he found out that nobody was coming for help, he got worried that people will find out what he did, that he was in part of this whole insurance scam. He knew that he had to go down with that ship because he was dead anyway. Captain Smith and the small group of people that knew what they did probably all really went down, and it died with them because they didn't know that people still wouldn't find out about this. The other thing, Captain Smith really waited a while before he did get lifeboats going. He waited a while before he said, let's start filling the lifeboats with more people, because he knew, or he thought, that California was going to be there to rescue them. That's the reason why I believe they waited so long, that the ship was halfway sunk before they started really doing something. There really is a lot more to this. I wish you guys would look at these books, because it's interesting to me. It may not be interesting to you. Let me know what you think in the comments about this, or even if you took time to watch this. If you like this kind of thing, maybe I will do another half on all the other details. Let me know. Love you guys. Have a good night.